Hey everybody, it's me, the Einstein of Wall Street, here from the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange. You know what? You know something about me. You know, I probably spent majority of my early childhood in space, right? And so it's always been something that's been incredibly intriguing for me. And I've brought you everything from food, finance, fashion, and all kinds of fun stuff here at Trade Like Einstein. And so obviously, recently, you know, there's, what sort of intrigued me was that recently I met this gentleman on the floor. Obviously, space is becoming a huge thing. There are a number of space IPOs, and obviously SpaceX, which is the most well-known company in that, is sort of talking about their projected IPO for 2026. And it's been mulling around for a while, and it's had good days and bad days. The industry is sort of very fascinating. While it's super I was reading one of the things on this gentleman. His name is Jack Kerr. And it was like revenue strong, insights light. What was the line? It was so cool. I actually loved it. What was it? Data rich, insight poor, right? So, you know, look, some people know a lot about space. Some don't. To some, it's incredibly intriguing. I mean, I've been around here for 137 years. So I was here when they supposedly walked on the moon. I actually think they did. A lot of people don't. But anyway, so space is really, it's the final frontier, right? And these are the voyages of the Einstein of Wall Street. So I'm bringing you Jack Kerr, and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Thanks for having
Pleasure.
me.
So give me a little background on you. So we met on the floor the other day, and so you are
I'm the research director at Payload. Payload is a space media publication. We cover the industry of space. We cover the business of space, the economics, and the policy of space. So there's a lot of venture-backed startups that have come about in the last 10 years in the space industry.
Okay.
There are a bunch of companies that have IPO'd in the last 5 years in the space industry. So it's a small and niche, but growing very fast industry. So we cover all of it.
Okay. Well, you know, I was curious is because you think about it, well, like how many spaceships have actually gone up in space. And actually, I think a lot more than we even think, right? You always think of like I've been around a little longer than you, but you think of, you know, the first time we walked on the moon and Apollo this and Apollo that. And then there was the space shuttle and all that kind of thing. If it's a sector that anyone is really interested in. But, you know, if you think about it, it's actually a lot bigger than one would think, right? When I was thinking that and I saw that like data rich revenue flush, because it is a very revenue flush industry. I was wondering, like, well, how are these people making any money? Obviously, satellites, right? Is that the biggest part of it? So describe that to me.
Well, the important part of it is launch, because launch is the access to space. You can't get a satellite to space unless you have launch.
Okay.
So I think it's important to understand where we are today is like you mentioned before, is to understand our last 50 years of space activity.
Can you go back to you? I mean, obviously, you're a writer and a researcher, so you must know it all. I mean, where did it start? Was it like John F. Kennedy who started the space program?
Exactly. Exactly. A lot of money was put into it, and at that time, it was a government-only proposition.
Right.
Government was spending all their money in it. We did incredible things, but it was very expensive.
What's the original motivation? I mean, for going to space, just it being a new frontier, or was there? I mean, I know it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that. Were we trying to find? Do you know that?
Yeah, this was going back to the Cold War and the race with the Soviet Union at the time, and that kind of
people.
And that factors in today. Instead of the USSR, it's China today.
Right.
And we have this race back to the moon, but the broad first 50 years of space flight it was a government domain.
Okay.
The spacecraft were built by NASA, by the government.
Right.
It was a domain of legacy satellite communication providers, these like kind of ho-hum industry that wasn't growing that fast. And then it was the A&D primes, aerospace and defense primes, that were helping build access to space. So that was the first kind of iteration that lasted a long time.
It was about discovery back then. It was not about utility.
Yeah, there was some. Right? Yeah, there was some communicate. There was definitely communication satellites, but it wasn't this like growing. It was maybe growing a couple percentage points a year.
Right.
And that all changed in 2015.
Okay, wow.
When
space really recently.
Really recently, yeah. And that's when SpaceX launched their Falcon 9 rocket, which now launches 160 to 170 times a year.
Yeah, right. So
basically every other day.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, yeah.
I think about that. So there are, I mean, we always see it as it's a big thing,
Yeah.
you know, but we obviously don't see most of them.
Yeah.
And all I remember is that, you know, very often they go down more than they stay up. Right. I mean, obviously, it's, you know, if anyone has a memory of it, there was one of the space shuttles that went up. I guess it exploded. Right?
Yeah.
And there were lives lost. And so, you know, I mean, it's an incredibly risky thing. Right.
It is risky now. They're largely unmanned. So with the shuttle days, it was manned. Now it's less so. And that factors into it. But really, the core of it is SpaceX launched their Falcon 9 rocket and landed the booster stage. So rocket is comprised of 2 stages generally, booster stage, a second stage.
Okay.
Second stage goes to orbit. They, for the first time in the history of the industry, landed the booster stage.
Back on. Right. Because normally it would explode.
Normally
it was just wasted.
Exactly.
Right.
So then they could start reusing it.
Wow.
They can juice their margins. They can start like increasing the cadence. And that 2015 time frame.
Is this the Elon Musky thing? Or?
This was Elon who created this technology.
Okay.
And so that happened, and then you saw launch increasing, and you saw a move from geostationary orbit, which is very far away from Earth, to low Earth orbit, which is much closer. You can have better images, better satellite connectivity, but it zooms around Earth very fast. So you need a constellation.
That's a use case scenario. I mean, that's for Google Maps or for, I mean, that's
connectivity, better connectivity.
Right. That's a revenue stream.
Revenue stream. Okay. So satellites emerge. You have Planet. Actually, Planet Labs is on the screen right now, which is very interesting. This company.
That's funny. Wow.
Company Planet Labs. They had their earnings yesterday. Was the first real Earth observation company. They take pictures of the Earth, and they created this constellation enabled by Falcon 9 because it was launching a lot and at a nice price. They created this thing called a satellite constellation. Okay. So they became. It's basically a series of 10, 15, 20, 100 satellites that zip around low Earth orbit. Right. And that's very important because you have better imaging, you have better connectivity when you're closer to Earth. So
what was that movie with Will Smith and Gene Hackman where the enemy of the state?
Right.
You know, that movie, it was this image of, that we are being watched. Yeah. Right. And that at any point, I mean, that movie is
precisely
a good example, and I'm sure we are, but that was one of those examples. You know, the movie? Right, where they knew, they did these key scenes where they were able to key in, like from space down to find where, they actually were able to get a picture of the guy passing something in someone's. I mean, that's all possible stuff.
That's all possible stuff. So you had that kind of paradigm shift with that reusable rocket. A lot of startups emerged out of that. The next paradigm shift was in 2019, 2020 when the Space Force was formed.
That was under Trump originally.
Yeah.
Right.
And that added, basically, you had the NASA budget was $25 billion.
So the government doubled back involved.
Yeah.
And what was their purpose behind it?
There was helping. So that's
weaponry, wasn't it?
It's not weaponry, but it is important for modern warfare because connectivity is being able for warfighters to be able to talk to each other.
Okay.
There's not a cell tower in Iran.
Right.
There's not a cell tower in Afghanistan, but in space you can connect warfighter to warfighter.
Okay.
Or you can connect other instruments like a maritime asset or a drone through satellite connectivity.
Right. Okay.
And then, as you mentioned before, Earth being able to take images.
Right.
We don't, when we go into an adversarial situation, it's not a guy taking pictures on the ground.
Oh, no, right.
We get our imagery through space. So that became very important. We see that in the U.S. and Europe.
Right. I would imagine when we went to kill Osama bin Laden, I mean, a lot of those pictures were being done from space.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so there is a government part of it, right? I mean, obviously there's a big defense part of it as well, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's the second paradigm shift, and that added a lot of money into the industry and new applications.
Right.
The next paradigm shift, which we're about to head into, is this rocket called Starship that SpaceX is building.
Okay. And
Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' company, is also building this rocket called New Glenn. And this is going to bring New Glenn.
Okay.
This is going to bring the price to orbit even lower, and when you have the price to orbit even lower, you can have more things put into space. So it's a little bit, it's like like economists dream. It's like
it's a race to space in a way.
Yeah, you just like continue to lower the barriers, lower the price, lower the cost, and more things can open up in space, different applications that maybe we can't even imagine today.
Right. Look, we obviously know through AI, that we're in the middle of an industrial revolution as far as AI goes, and so and we're seeing that machine learning, that the more we learn, the more we know, and so it's all about data, and the more data, right, the more we know. So this is just the beginning of once we start as we learn more, like sky's the limit. That space is the limit.
Space is the limit. Yeah.
Space is the limit. I think it's incredibly exciting. So so as far as listed companies, obviously, look, so I've traded more IPOs than any human on earth, and at least for the last 40 years. And for me, that's incredibly exciting. And that whole process of going public, obviously, we do it better than anybody on the, all the other, at least our NASDAQ, perhaps, and I would hope that SpaceX lists here. But, obviously our differentiator is market makers, right? Market makers are those who inject liquidity into the marketplace and create a smooth and active market. And NASDAQ does not have that. And so especially when you've got volatile stocks. But I remember when Branson was here and we, what was that? What was the
Virgin Galactic?
Right. And so that's a different thing. What was a use case scenario for his whole? He went up to space.
Yeah. That was you have Virgin Galactic, which is still publicly traded, which is a space tourism business that was able to raise. That was all it was. You had Virgin Orbit, which was doing some launch, but
has that panned out into anything? That stock has been struggling.
Yeah, exactly. And Virgin Galactic, and they were able to raise a lot of money, but haven't really done much to show.
And it was literally for people to go up on.
Yeah, and that's a limit.
It's $250,000 ride.
Right, yeah. And it's a lit for a couple minutes. It's a limited market. And frankly, eventually the space tourism market will come, but it is, it needs to be. SpaceX is offering here for $50 million a seat. Right. A lot of money.
Yeah.
Even $250,000 is a lot of money. So it's more about the other use cases. It's like you mentioned before, it's all about data. The world is all about data. Right. Space is just a transfer of data.
Right.
You have satellite communication that can beam down internet.
Right.
That's Starlink.
Okay.
Or connectivity to phones. And you have companies like Planet, Black Sky, Satellogic. There's a number of publicly traded companies that take images of the Earth.
Okay, and then that's their business model.
That's their business model.
And there is enough. Based on where, and that there's enough obviously demand for that. What about satellites are used for any number of things, whether it's by phone. Phone service, obviously, just connectivity.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. And we have Planet, who's right behind us, just turned.
Hand that out and look at
just
that.
Turned.
Put that, because that's curiously enough right behind us.
Earlier this year,
what is Planet?
Positive. They're one of the earliest Earth observation companies. They have hundreds of satellites in low Earth orbit taking pictures of the last time I checked, they were generating about $250 million of revenue.
Really?
And they're cash flow positive.
Wow.
So they are kind of proving that space can be a profitable.
And they're just selling that to any number of different venues.
Largely it ends up being government and defense related.
Okay.
If you want to know where your adversary is,
right,
and you want to know where potential buildups are,
right,
the best way to do that is to have coverage from,
right,
and that's
the enemy of the state kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Look, obviously, and then whoever's got the race to the best of that is obviously is the one who may win.
Yes, that's a key driver with a lot of early venture funding and a lot of these early space companies. If you say, hey, we are the earliest of movers,
right,
and the market leaders, maybe the second, but like you're right there, that if you believe, and we could go into this, but if you believe that you are entering a uncapped TAM, because there are applications that we can't even think of now, because space is the last frontier. For example, space data centers, data centers in space, that is the primary justification for SpaceX's reported IPO. is that they want to build out an entire fleet of data centers in space.
Now we had a space station.
Yes.
Right? The government had a space station, and it was global, right? It was international.
Yeah.
Right. And that was obviously trying to, I mean, it felt to me like it was sort of to forge relationships across border. I mean, because like while we're fighting and we hate each other down here, maybe up there we're cool, right? And also probably as a data collector, right? For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, those things. And was that at all successful? I mean, you may know more about it.
It was enormously successful.
It was.
I mean, it's still up there, and it's been going.
People have been there for years, right?
30 years now. Yeah. I mean, it's something along those lines, maybe 25 years.
Right. And it's literally a massive spaceship that's up and up.
Yeah.
Orbiting the Earth.
Yeah. And it is probably the last standing real cooperation we have with Russia, because we send astronauts still to this day on Russian rockets and vice versa. It was very expensive.
Right.
It was all government driven.
Right.
It will be retired the next few years.
Okay.
And the idea is to bring a commercial player to build a new station that and folks can visit and do it at a much lower, like 5% of the cost as the ISS.
But look, I mean, if we think about things like that like, oh yeah, of course it's happening. But I mean, to think about the technology necessary to actually go into space, we don't know. There's so much we don't know about it. I mean, what's the name of the guy? The black guy who always talks about space.
Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah, right. I mean, he's amazing. I could sit and listen to him forever.
Yeah.
And I find space and stuff like that, like, really intriguing.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about it. It's just, first of all, it's so grand and huge.
Yep.
I mean, and to think of, how big it actually is and what goes on in the other ones, and the fact that, that they're, I look when I'm sitting around on a Saturday night at 2 a.m, I'm surely going to watch like Ancient Aliens, right? Because they're wondering like, like what
is this existence
there?
Yeah.
I mean, are we the only people, who are, alive? And are there other, planets that are, habited, right? Inhabited, which is sort of a fun thing. So let's talk about SpaceX more for a minute. So this, the beginning of it was 2015 when the whole thing commenced. And
it was before they were founded 20 years ago, but really the breakthrough was being able to reuse this booster
because it became incredibly cost efficient.
Efficient, and then you can ramp launches really tremendously.
Okay, and now, so how far? So obviously, in the last couple of days, literally, right? The price. I mean, it came out the original valuation. Do we know what it was?
I mean, it was. I mean, this is like it's a privately traded company, so valuations go up and down and aren't necessarily what they would
internal numbers, their revenues that we don't know.
Yeah, and the way SpaceX wants to handle it, but we saw the valuation increase very rapidly from $400 billion in, I think it was June even, to a reported $800 billion tender offer really recently, on Friday. This is a secondary, and then reports came out that Elon Musk had essentially confirmed that the company is going to go public in the next 12 to 18 months
at a
potentially, that's what the report's at, a 1.5 trillion valuation. The company is growing at 50% revenue a year, and it's really they're in a massive market, which is basically the telecom market, because they beam down internet to the world. A lot of the world is unconnected.
Right.
In New York, we take it for granted. There's fiber optic cables everywhere. Internet is awesome. A lot of America is unconnected. Right. And then if you go to a country like Nigeria, you go to India, fiber optic build out is very small.
Right.
A lot of folks just connect via their phone, like basically hotspotting. Right. So there's a huge market opportunity for beaming down very high speed internet to folks around the world. And that is growing very fast. So that is the crux.
And that's the business. That's the
Starlink business
model. Yeah. Starlink. Okay.
Yeah. And then just in the last couple months, they, as we were talking about earlier, they proposed this idea of data centers in space.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that. Oh, that's wild. Really?
And the And that is
Actually,
really
like
what,
creating GPU type stuff, AI.
yeah,
So that is
yeah,
really.
yeah. So, and that's what really kicked off the need to raise a big dollar amount on public markets.
Right.
They're reportedly looking to raise about 30 billion, maybe more, $30 billion, to pay for what? NVIDIA chips, of course. It all comes back to NVIDIA chips.
NVIDIA chips.
No, so what the crux of the concept, which by the way is not proven out yet,
Okay.
is that what is AI and what is data center, but a function of energy. And
that's what we're hearing now, right?
Yeah.
Because Jensen recently went on and said, right, that so much of it that we think of it as it's obviously it's a limited supply entity, the GPUs, and that the data centers are the way to create more. And obviously, there's trying to monopolize all of that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
from a trader's point of view, and somebody, so Dan Ives, you know who Dan Ives is?
Yeah.
Okay, and so he's the champion of AI, and he and I have a podcast together. And, you know, I sort of came along into AI not really knowing what it was and sort of was, you know, taken aback by it. I kind of, like most naive people in that space, thought, you know, it's going to outsource people and it's not something we want in our lives and blah, blah, blah. And then I found out from Dan that, no, our lives are going to be way, way better. But we are now fast tracking towards it in a huge way.
Yeah.
And that the CapEx expenditure is in the trillions and that you've got everybody being involved,
Yep.
you know, and then we saw how NVIDIA, you know, no, look, first then you saw Oracle and Microsoft and Google and Meta all putting hundreds of $billions in committing to data centers as well down the road because they did not want to miss the boat. They wanted some skin in the game. That was curious because that's not their sector. And then you saw the way, you know, then there's the thing going on between China and NVIDIA and the US and all that.
Yeah.
Kind of the chip war, as you mentioned, with Huawei. And then, but that's so curious, you know, and then there's the, so that data center, you know, there are different levels of chips as well. But recently, I sort of got off track, but recently Jensen started talking about at the end of the day, if we're looking for what is the next thing that is going to be the determiner of cost and availability for these data centers, what's going to fuel it is energy, right? And but as a trader point of view, that's really, you know, when people are always looking for a secondary and tertiary derivative trade of a thing, like, so that's the trade right now, whether it's going to be nuclear or it's going to be, you know, a grid energy stuff, depending where they build those data centers, those are investable entities, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So you're hearing that's
so. Yeah, the idea in space is that you have the most efficient generation of energy because on Earth you have solar panels.
Right.
The sun comes through a lot of atmosphere, and you don't get the most efficient energy transfer. In space, you're closer to the sun.
Right.
There's no atmosphere. There's no weather to block it,
right.
and you can have, importantly, 24/7 access to the sun.
Wow.
So that is the and there's a couple other reasons why it might make sense. There's also a lot of reasons why it could be just like a ridiculous idea. I mean, you're talking like if you putting things in space is very difficult.
Okay.
It's very expensive. Getting things into space is very difficult.
Okay.
Very expensive. If something breaks, you can't go fix it. You can't like take it out and blow on it like old Nintendo. There's a lot of radiation. Why not just build it in, you know, upstate New York or Nevada with these massive solar panels? So there's a lot of very smart people in the last couple months who think it's viable. Okay. Jeff Bezos wants to get into it. Sam Altman wants to get into it. Eric Schmidt, old Google CEO, wants to get into it. And SpaceX is now fully committing, with this IPO, to spend a lot of money to build out this idea and this concept. And when you can start thinking of a data center in space, if it works, right. You now have a TAM that's bigger than that Starlink connectivity TAM. Right. You have the data centers in space TAM, which is kind of...
What does TAM stand for?
Total addressable market.
Okay.
Yeah. So just like you have connectivity is a huge total addressable market. Right. Data center space is probably bigger than that. So that is kind of how the SpaceX IPO came about. Maybe why there's a little bit of a rush to do it.
Right. This is kind of getting fast tracked. That whole idea is at the story.
It took a lot of the industries by surprise.
Oh, wow.
Originally, forever.
Where did that story come up from? Who was the first?
The information first reported a woman named Katie Roof, and then it was the Wall Street Journal reported it, and then the Bloomberg. Not me.
He didn't get this.
I'm just talking about it now, but it was really impressive journalism by all.
Yeah, my God,
three publications. Yeah. It was a great scoop, and so it's a very exciting time for the entire space industry.
God, yeah.
And also to see kind of more insight into a private company, SpaceX, is going to be very interesting. The one really to me, maybe the most interesting thing of all this is not that they IPO'd. It's that forever Elon Musk wanted to spin off their Starlink division,
right,
which is their connectivity division,
right,
and keep the SpaceX launch private to have maximum control over it.
Right.
With the idea...
For control and not for expensing wise. I mean, because if you think about it, if you've got Starlink and that's working and you've got a lot of risk on the other side that could be dragging down the valuation or expense. I mean, that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I kind of...
It's a lot of that original idea was like Elon Musk's big idea is to colonize Mars. And he wants to, that is still the founding goal of Mars. And the idea always was that he was going to spin off Starlink, cash flow and raise money and funds and funnel it back to a private launch SpaceX to fund a Mars mission under his control.
Right.
And now it comes out that they decided to keep the company together and have this be like a super business,
right?
And have it IPO as one business together.
That's incredibly fascinating. And so, well, look, it's so exciting. But just for the nooks and crannies of IPOs is something obviously you know a little about. So you're describing that. So obviously, those who have insider stock, right, are employees, right? I mean, that's how that works, right? And then you mentioned the secondaries. That caught me off guard too. And I didn't realize that they can actually do a secondary raise. I mean, it's been mulling around and marinating for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, sometimes the IPOs take a really long time, more than 10 years, right? We saw that with, a lot of ones that came out in the last 2 or 3 years. So you've got inside employees selling stock, but that's for them to raise money, right?
Correct. So
how
SpaceX
does that benefit the company itself?
It doesn't. It doesn't benefit.
Okay.
So the company has been around for 20 plus years.
Okay.
You have a lot of folks who have been at the company
right, exactly,
for the entirety of the time,
or close to the entirety. So have been paid in stock, and that's usually the case.
Yeah, and the company has been for the last number of years has been cash flow positive, and hasn't needed to raise, and they don't need to raise more additional capital to keep the business afloat. For some growth initiatives like the IPO, it's a different story. But what they've been doing over the last couple of years is have these twice a year secondary sales where they allow employees, if they choose to get some liquidity.
Yeah, it's a great idea. It creates brand loyalty for sure. Yeah. I mean, think about it. There are companies that start in it. And look, I'm sure in the beginning, people are just paid in stock. I mean, you think about it, there's that great story of the guy, who painted a mural on the wall in that Facebook, right? Yeah. And he said, here's a couple of shares of stock in exchange. But I don't have any money to pay you, but here, whatever. And that was worth $800 million or something, So those stories are just wonderful about it. Look, the whole fun thing about an IPO is it's a matter of that, it's a confidence game, right? That you have confidence in this, that it's going, no matter how long it takes, that it's going to come to fruition. Everyone should know that there are a couple of reasons why people IPO. It's either as an exit strategy to get money and run, or it's to raise more capital to do grander and bigger things, right? When we're talking into the trillions. And obviously this is the answer for that. So the fact that it's getting closer and closer, that means obviously that the risk has been deferred in lots of cases, and that the excitement around the space. I mean, you're writing about it and you're researching about it. I mean, are people really, all in on SpaceX?
Yeah.
No, we had somebody yesterday who was calling our booth asking if we could find them stock.
Yeah.
And I called places that, there are not insider trading. There are,
Secondary
companies,
markets,
secondary market
yeah.
stocks, and there's very little available now because of the fact that the valuation is escalating on a
And people
virtually day-to-day basis. It's going up like crazy. So why would I want to sell my stock?
I think in addition to SpaceX, it's also really positive for the broader industry. So SpaceX is the dominant player here,
Right.
the most revenues, the most market dominance.
Right.
But you do have a lot of non-public startups that have emerged that are generating real revenue and will be very important players in the ecosystem that will be looking to go public in the next couple of years. You have, as I mentioned before, you have a host of publicly traded space companies today, and the sector has been the best performing. The space sector has been the best performing, or one of the best performing sector classes this year.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
Companies up 100%, 200%, and this is
attribute that. I mean,
yeah. There's a couple things. I mean, I want to list a couple of the companies because it's not just Planet. You have Intuitive Machines, which is a lunar company. You have Redwire, which is a infrastructure and space company. You have Firefly, which is another rocket company.
Right.
You have AST, a Space Mobile, which is a direct-to-cell connectivity company that trades at a $25 to $30 billion market cap.
Right. Wow.
You have Rocket Lab, which trades at a $30 billion market cap for a sustained period of time.
Right.
That does builds rockets, and they also have satellites that they build as well. So the back to your question of why it's been up so much.
Right.
The crux of it is that we're in a risk-on environment.
Right.
It tracks a lot of the other quote unquote pre-revenue, little revenue kind of, but big, as we mentioned, TAM markets, like nuclear stocks or like data center stocks.
Right.
And it doesn't make them it doesn't necessarily make them a good investment or a bad investment.
Right.
These are bets that are made almost like VC venture capital bets that are made on emerging companies in industries that folks think have a lot of room to run.
Right.
So if you look at let's say there's 20 publicly traded space businesses, maybe 8 of them are these legacy players.
There are about 20. Is that
about, give or take? Yeah. There's a fair amount that are legacy providers like a Viasat or Iridium, and then there's more like startup players.
Right.
And I think the way to look at those startup players is you're almost in the like later stage VC investing, where some of them, we talked about Virgin Orbit and Virgin Galactic, won't do so well.
Right.
Some of them will do extraordinarily well, and it's a bet on market leaders that can be risky, but could have very high returns if the space industry continues to expand, as it's doing today.
Well, you figure if it's $50 million a trip, you don't need that many trips to make it profitable, actually, right? I mean, it's sort of strange as that is.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like some of these contracts, and the humans in space is a very small part of the market,
right?
But some of these contracts are really big DoD contracts or NASA contracts that you can have a really nice business on 2 or 3 of those contracts to build out your facility and then start finding other product revenue streamlines.
Right.
So yeah, and that's just the U.S. market.
Right.
Europe realized.
Who are the other players globally? We know China is obviously, and Russia is.
Yeah,
it's actually China's race to space. Just China a big player?
China is the biggest player. They're also racing to get to land humans on the moon for the first time.
Okay.
The U.S. is in that race, and it's right now neck and neck, looking at like a 20
again.
No, we've been to the moon.
Don't believe we've been to the moon a couple of times.
6 times, yeah.
Really?
But not since 1972.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's right.
That's a long time, and no one else has stepped foot on the moon.
Was that did we only step there once, or did we do a couple of rides?
We did 6 times. Yeah.
Oh, really?
People tend to forget after the first one, and that was a story of Apollo. It became less and less interesting to repeat the same mission for the general public, and then funding kind of stopped after that. But no other country has done it.
Okay.
China is moving fast to get there before 2030. The U.S. is moving fast to get there before 2030.
Right.
The U.S. is looking to go there in a permanent way, so bringing 30 times as much mass to the moon on a single trip.
The moon somewhere where there's no atmosphere, right?
There's no atmosphere. There is gravity. About 1/6 of the of Earth's gravity, and it's only a 3-day trip away.
The moon.
So yeah.
Wow.
So Mars is much further,
Yeah,
about 6 months.
It takes 6 months to get to Mars.
But it's a more interesting geological place because there is an atmosphere, a very thin atmosphere, but there is an atmosphere there. And
any other planets that are potentially viable?
Those are the only two. Well, the moon isn't a planet, but Mars is the only. And it's lucky that we have a planet like Mars, because a lot of planets are gas planets that you couldn't, or it's way too hot or way too cold.
Right.
And that's what kind of makes. I mean, I cover the space industry, but I think everybody in this industry also has a little bit of nerd inside them, and care about these broader questions of life and expanding past the Earth's surface.
Yeah. And as far as you're concerned, is this something were you like a 12-year-old geek?
No,
was like all about space.
The biggest, yeah. I was like you, watching YouTube clips, in college. Well, I was watching every show I can get my hands on, and I'm also a economics nerd. I love this industry. I used to work on Wall Street. So
doing what?
I was doing leverage financing aerospace and defense acquisitions for private equity. And then the space industry really started to emerge in those kind of paradigm shifts that I told you earlier, around that 2021 time frame, where folks like Planet were starting to go public, and we started to see these financials and get an insight into what's happening.
Right, because for a while there, it just didn't seem like a viable thing. It was just and even from the state, to think about it, we went there in 1972, and we've never been there since.
Yeah.
I mean, that, it sort of went up and died. Yeah. So, you know what, look, I think it's incredibly exciting. And, the fact that it's so real, and when a company goes public and you start seeing the whole, the best case, the monetary scenarios that make it work, it gets real for people. And, space is the place. It's exciting. I mean, the thought of that you can go there. I'm more interested to wonder if there are other planets where there are, could have been inhabitable.
Well, Mars at one point in its life had flowing rivers.
It did.
It had a thicker
on the.
Yeah, you could see the cutout.
Yeah.
And they used to have a thicker atmosphere. So it's possible we go there and we see fossilized records of these ancient, maybe not civilizations, but microbial activity potentially.
I'm going all there. Anything's possible.
Yeah.
Look, if you think about it, what we're with AI. I mean, if you thought, I grew up with the Flintstones, right? It's one of the scenarios I've been using when I've been talking to people about AI, and now in my lifetime, it's going to be more like the Jetsons, right? I mean, and it's amazing because the more I talk to Dan about it, we're no more than 5 years away from deep robotics. Theo and I interviewed a robot here up on this balcony a couple of weeks ago. There's an ETF that deals with the robots, and Coid was the name of the robot. And we had a little dance together. We danced outside. We had a race. He beat me in a race. And and they're saying that they're building 200 of them a day, and there'll be 1 billion of them by 2030.
Yeah.
And and Dan always talks about that. This is, we're only in the second inning of a 9-inning game in the AI space. And so, I mean, if you think about the where AI is going to take us as far as, growth, accelerated growth, and how that's going to change our lives, and that literally almost, probably 1 out of every 2 homes will have will be smart homes and or robotic homes, and in literally not in 20 years, but in 5 years.
Yeah.
Right. It's just right there. And so, by SpaceX going public in the nearer future than not, I mean, it was always something that was so far away. I'm sure for you, it must be incredibly exciting that all this stuff is becoming so real, and that it's all plausible and that it's happening. Right. I mean, that's kind of exciting. You would, I'm probably, I'm a little older than you,
Yeah.
but to think that, that to have robots and to have all this, I mean, I still remember I was joking with somebody last night about, as a kid, we had a TV set that only had 5 channels, and I'm not that old, right?
Yeah.
And then the antenna was sometimes just the, a coat hanger
Yeah.
when you couldn't get the station right. So to think of where we're at now with cell phones and connectivity and the fact that we're actually using space,
and
part of our lives is wild.
In a profitable way too. And that's key to this whole thing, is that it's no longer, just, relying on discovery or a non-profitable adventure, or it has a business model, has economics, and it is endless white space,
Right.
a blank space to start building out. The question often comes down to the how fast it accelerates.
Right.
So founders like the robotics company you said,
Right.
throw out very big numbers on how fast and how much it can be. Directionally, the deep tech industry, with nuclear, with robotics, with space, directionally, the comments are correct. But we see it a lot in space, where it's like, a 2026 launch really ends up being a 2028 launch.
Yeah, of course.
Which is okay. Is okay, but it is, potentially as a investor, it's something to think about.
Right.
But there are a lot of different exciting companies in this industry, and one we haven't really talked about is Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos's company.
Tell me about it.
So Jeff Bezos started a rocket company, Blue Origin, before Elon Musk started SpaceX.
Really?
And for decades, literally decades. It's been
I didn't.
a
slow.
slow.
Really, just nerdy book guy.
No, he's
already doing stuff.
Yeah, but it was a serious project, but it was a slow moving project.
Okay.
And then they finally unveiled their New Glenn rocket, which I mentioned before. And
that was before he had any money, right? So, or was it?
It was
the beginning of his.
Right. So it was a slow build up to it. And rockets are very difficult.
Yeah.
Like it is.
Rocket versus a spaceship.
Rockets and spaceships are kind of interchangeable, but it's a very difficult. It's a controlled explosion. It's a very difficult physics problem to solve and chemical problem to solve. But he did taking off from Earth. Yeah, okay. There's a lot of gravity trying to keep you on Earth.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So Blue Origin now, just in the last 12 months, unveiled their New Glenn rocket, which is a really big rocket, and it has had a couple successful launches.
Right.
And just a month ago, like I said, with the Falcon 9 landing and reusing the booster in 2015, they were the second company to successfully launch a rocket and catch that booster on a drone ship.
Exciting, yeah.
So that allows, that means there's more competition to SpaceX, direct competition to SpaceX, which is great for the industry as a whole.
I find it fascinating though that it's like these two guys, right? Your geeky, billionaires of are the ones who are like running these things, right? It's kind of, that's a curious thing. And the last thing I'll say, it's a great story, and I'm happy we're telling it, right? Because a lot of the people who are watching my show are people who are young retail investors, always looking for alternative things to invest in, right? That's the whole point of this thing. One of my biggest quests is the fact that in 2020, the democratization of the trading community, and 50 million new traders came into the space, right? And everybody with an iPhone and $100 can now trade the market, and they have access to the market, and they are investors and they're traders. And for me, that's awesome. I love that part of it. Yeah. And so, but the fact that the data and this AI thing and the data center thing has been so much part of my narrative for the last couple of months, as I've been on CNN talking about in all these places, and the whole data center thing and the challenges of that. I'm working with a company called Argentum. So there's this guy named Andrew Sopko. So obviously you know this part of it, but the whole AI thing and the whole limited supply of GPUs, and then how NVIDIA is sort of, monopolizing everything, and they're grabbing and locking themselves into all the supply that's out there, right? And then but there is a whole nother market of people who need GPUs for AI, and there are apparently a whole nother market of people, smaller, what they're calling them is GPU entrepreneurs, who are making, it's like Bitcoin miners, who are making GPUs, right? And so this gentleman, who CEO of a company called Batch, it's an AI logistics trucking company, who I've become friendly with over the last couple of years, created Argentum. And Argentum is a marketplace where he's identified all these small GPU creators that are all in India and in Eastern Europe and whatnot. And he's aggregated all their supply. And then he's identified all of these small demanders, small people who are companies that can't make a $2 billion 9-year deal with the Google, because that's what they have to do to get GPU inventory. Yeah. And they're still wanting it because they need it for whatever it may be. I mean, a hospital. I mean, the demand for GPUs or in AI are really way broader than we think, right? It's not just NVIDIA and all that stuff. And so what he's doing is he created a marketplace, which is like secondary and tertiary, where he's going to have all these small sellers, right? GPU entrepreneurs and he'll aggregate all their supply. And then all of these small buyers who would never have a chance to get any inventory, and he's going to connect them in a marketplace, right? And it's going to be in the business model. I mean, he's already locked in billions of dollars of supply and demand already in business. And it turns out also, the more I learn about the space, that NVIDIA has many different kinds of chips, right? Some high, it's like Uber, right? Uber Black and Uber, economy. I mean, you can get all different kinds of cars. There are all these different kinds of GPUs. There's highly efficient GPUs, and then there are some of them have been used, they can be reused and stuff like that. And it turns out there's a market for all of those too. So he's creating this thing. So it's just, to think of data centers in space is just boom. You blew my mind with right. Obviously it's in the beginning stages of it, and obviously it's not something you're going to just jump into, because the investment is huge. Yes, the risk is huge. Yep. And I'm sure until the risk is way lower, are they going to do it? But there's always somebody to take a shot at it, right? And that just blows, that blows the door off of so many of these things. Because when you have something that's in so much huge demand and limited supply, like a Bitcoin or whatever, and then suddenly the doors are open to other potential stuff, it's groundbreaking.
Yeah. The really interesting thing about the data centers in space conversation is that this wasn't a conversation 6 months ago, a year ago. It wasn't on anyone's radar. Right. And that's the broader point of space. And what investors are excited about is that they're in 3 or 4 years, with new technology emerging, there will be another application that we haven't thought about today, of course, in this kind of like new frontier that continues to emerge. And it all comes down to how fast that will happen and how big that can get, or is there, is it a more of a slow roll to getting there?
Right. Amazing. You know what? This is really exciting. I will definitely follow it up. I mean, you obviously have an exciting job, because it's growing, and it's growing faster. It's really going at an exponential rate. And so I'm really happy I met you.
This is awesome.
And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, check this out. What's the name of the
Payload Space.
Go check out Payload. And this is a great story. Look, I'm guarantee you there are millions of space geeks out there. And think about that. I'm not a financial advisor, but you know what? It's going to be something that's going to be on our radar, because IPOs are something that I trade. And obviously, and we're starting to hear it's starting to mull around. As we get closer, it's going to accelerate. And before you know it, we'll be here that morning, with and it's going to be huge,
Yep.
I'm sure. And it's going to
Yep.
be exciting as it was. Look, you go back to Richard Branson and that, that IPO was a big deal, right? Everyone was walking around in spacesuits and, and it was kind of cool. So, I remember it was Jen Rallison, who was one of his, co-pilots in the thing. And, we became friendly, but anyway, awesome.
This is great.
My
Thanks for having me
pleasure.
on.
That's all. You know what? Trade like Einstein, and that's all I got to say about that. Blows my mind. Giddy up on that. Data centers in space. Check it out.